Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. I'm Alexie, and this is Adam, and we are an online resource and community for up-and-coming screenwriters. And today, we're doing something fun. We are looking at Pixar stories and talking about how they work, why they work, the character arc, all that good stuff. So I'm super excited. And also thank you everybody who was able to be here early. We are starting earlier than usual today, but we'll be back on a 4 o'clock schedule next week.
Thank you, everybody. So immediately when I think of Pixar, I think it's synonymous with great personal stories, really strong protagonists and clarity about everything. John always talks about Pixar as they mastered it. They really understand that. But I think there are a lot of reasons for that. And I think there's a shallow understanding. And then I think there's a more nuanced understanding of what that means. And I think the shallow understanding is, okay, these are children's stories and they have to be very simple and they focus on simple things to communicate to children. Fair enough. That's, important. But I think that Pixar stories are also deeply effective beyond their simplicity, not just because of their simple. I would say simple maybe has a negative connotation. What I mean by simple is it's focused and they go deep with the characters.
Yeah, it seems simple because it works and everything is of a piece. So it gives you the illusion that it's simple when getting there was probably anything but.
I
agree.
And the one thing I want to mention, and I think more filmmaking teams and producers and writers should collaborate this way. But the way I forget what it's called, but basically the way they vet animatics and collaborate with their screenwriters at the Pixar story team is the reason why their movies are good. And basically what their process is this. They will have all of their story team, meaning all of the directors at Pixar and all of the chief story people who are maybe staff screenwriters, they all sort of break the story together and have brainstorm with the screenwriter in the room. And the screenwriter basically sort of, you have a really fan loud in your room, Alexie.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, you do. I turned that off. Sorry. Thank you.
There we go.
What they do is the screenwriter listens to all of this feedback and ideas and they go away and they come up with their first draft and they give their first draft to the storyboarding team. And the storyboarding team basically creates an edited animatic of the first screenplay. And the story team, all the directors and writers who helped brainstorm the initial idea, they watch the storyboard, they watch the film, and then they give notes on that. They don't give notes on the screenplay necessarily. I'm sure people do, but not in that official capacity. And then the screenwriter listens to the notes, and then they do it again and again and again. When I mean do it again, I mean they write an entire draft again based on the notes of that conversation. And they'll go through this process 6 to 8 times over a year until they know what the story is, until the edited together animatic works for all of those people in that room. And these aren't just random producers. These are the Pixar story team, the directors and the people who really understand the legacy and context of the studio. So basically it's going through a lot of really good brains. And that's one of the reasons why those stories really work. And it's interesting that so many of the stories are so similar in certain respects without it necessarily feeling like a forced formula.
Yeah, it's something that it's one of those things where once you find it, once you see it, you notice it in every single Pixar film, but before then you're just sort of blissfully unaware and enjoying the story. And by the way, so everyone knows, I am dropping links to the scripts in the chat in case you want to check them out, because they are all pretty good. Good.
Before we talk about specific movies, I think it's going to just sort of bring up what we think is really good, what they do really well. Because I don't want to say that, Pixar is perfect, that every film they do is amazing. That's definitely not the case. The things they tend to do very well, though, are the things that we can learn from as screenwriters. And they always choose the right protagonist, and they choose the right world for the protagonist. And what I mean by that isn't just like the setting of the overall story. I mean the right like subjective act one story and act one problems. And their movies start really strongly because of that.
I would say that's true. Adam, I don't know if I'm going to be jumping the gun on it, but I wanted to talk about the whole grand passion thing that they've got going on, which is a big one. Look at your face. You wanted to say it. I can tell.
No. You said it. Go for it. Go for it. This is your train.
I guess to back up real quick, we chose 3 Pixar films that we think are really, really strong, and they're now all linked in the chat in case you want to check them out. We chose Toy Story, which was the first one, the first Pixar film, and I think it was the first computer, like CGI, generated film ever. At least like mainstream.
Feature, and that was good.
Feature, yeah. I think the first computer generated image was like this like spinning hand or spinning something. I can't remember what it was, but it was in the Creativity Inc. book about Pixar's whole journey. Anyway, so we chose Toy Story, we chose Inside Out, and we chose COCO, which are all just amazing stories. And I think some Pixar favorites. Obviously, there's a lot to choose from. And if John was here, I'll tell you right now, we would be doing Up, Ratatouille, and what's his other one? I don't know. Up and Ratatouille for sure. And so there's a lot to choose from. But we chose these because they seem very different. Like they look very different. They're in like different worlds, but they follow this Pixar formula and deliver like really unique, satisfying stories in a surprisingly similar way. Up and up. Yeah.
Just to go back to what you just said about grand passion. So that relates in my mind to choosing the right protagonist. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is a character, a flawed character who desperately wants something that they either can't have or aren't getting. Right? Like that's kind of the story engine. That's like the mechanism that makes all of these stories hit hard. And, you know, that grand passion, the thing that Pixar does really well is they connect the unmet need, the unmet want with the grand passion. The flaw. Yeah. They connect the flaw with the grand passion. Like Woody loves being Andy's favorite toy more than anything in the world. But his flaws, he has a toxic relationship with that. Like, he loves being Andy's favorite toy more than anything in the world, but he loves being the favorite. Mm-hmm. To the exclusion of maybe other people. He thinks he's better than other people, other toys, because of that. He's the top dog. Like, that, the fact that his flaw is tied to his great love, that is genuine. Like, he genuinely loves Andy. That is so easy to empathize with a character like that. Joy is very similar in Inside Out. Joy is the protagonist. Joy loves her job. She loves, and she believes, however, that she genuinely believes that joy is more important than the other emotions. She doesn't understand the big picture. She has a false belief about what it is she does and why she loves it.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that in COCO, this one actually kind of plays with the formula a little bit in that, I mean, he does have a grand passion. And I would say the grand passion in this case is Ernesto de la Cruz, the musician specifically that he's really, really going after. Or it's music, and his flaw is that he's like really hyper fixated on like what this one guy is, like what's one guy.
I think that's actually more. I think that's actually.
Is that more. It? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, because the grand passion is good. So I guess to back up to make sure that this part was clear, Pixar. Who was it that said it? Michael Arndt? Was he the one who you heard it from?
He did this amazing video. I think that's on Toy Story 3 and his process with Toy Story 3. Mm-hmm. Oh, and there was actually another video he did on beginnings in Pixar films, and that's kind of what we're sourcing this idea from, which you all should all watch. It's great.
I'll grab those links when in a little bit. But so his thing is that Pixar films use this idea of a grand passion in place of like just a regular or more like traditional story flaw. Like it's kind of connected to like their motivation and like their internal goals and who they are, but it's this thing that in and of itself is not bad, but the way that they choose to pursue it gets them into problems. And it's that they're too single track minded about this grand passion, and it creates a lot of conflict in their lives, and they have to develop a more healthy relationship with whatever their passion is over the course of the story.
They have a false belief, which is, I think, all flaws are usually best characterized for deep engagement as a lie the protagonist tells themselves. So they all have this genuine thing they love, the grand passion, but they have a toxic belief tied to the grand passion that gets them into trouble. And that's just a recurrent thing. I can also think of The Incredibles, right? Mr. Incredible loves being a superhero more than anything. But, you know, when he's a little bit of a blowhard about it, he does think he's better than people. You know, he's not a great guy. He's not great to his fans. And Finding Nemo, Marlin loves being a father more than anything, right? But he's very controlling, and he doesn't believe his son can exist on his own as his own fish.
We haven't used these banners in a while, so I figured I would throw this up for anybody taking notes. But this is really like the core of the point that we're making right now, is that the flaw in most Pixar films is like
WALL-E doesn't have a toxic relationship with their grand passion.
I can't even. Gosh, it's been a while since I've read or watched WALL-E, and I saw it at a drive-in. It was one of those, so it was really hard to see and pay attention. So I need to really get a sense
of the one thing that really works in that movie, though, is you understand his situation, and you understand why he's like his desire to like sort of take care of things.
Yeah,
you know, like that communicates very strongly, even if like I think the flaw in that movie is a little soft. I think the other Pixar movies are more popular because they're more human characters, you know. Although WALL-E loves, I guess, but you know, it's a human emotion.
WALL-E, I think people were like shook by WALL-E because people didn't expect to, especially to have like kids like a film that had so little dialogue. I think that was kind of what was shocking about WALL-E to a lot of people, was that it felt like it felt like storytelling that we weren't used to yet, where it wasn't relying as heavily on the dialogue. And I think that's a lot of why that film stood out and is still considered. I mean, it's a great film. It's a great film.
Yeah, but I don't remember it the same way I remember Finding Nemo.
No, I don't either. I remember. Yeah. Wasn't it Eve? Was Eve his little buddy?
He's in love with Eve. He's in love with Eve.
It is Eve, right? Yeah.
Heart eyes and everything. Yeah. But like, coming back to like what's important about this idea of grand passion, which I feel like isn't really talked about in a lot of screenwriting books. You know, I don't think every character needs a grand passion. But here's a great example that's not Pixar that we always talk about. Whiplash. He has a grand passion, right? He loves drumming. He wants to be the best drummer in the world. I can list off 1,000 films like that. Like, you know, even if it's soft, to give the character a thing they love, it's actually kind of a trick to make you care about them. Because it's one thing to say, oh, he wants something. Like, they love something. They're thirsty for something.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, I do remember at one point when I was working on a script and I was talking to John about it. And I mean, it was specifically writing an animated script, so that might have something to do with it. Internet, for those of you who are familiar, which anyway, I was asking him for advice about it, and he was like, well, I already built the world, I'd built like the story stuff and everything, it felt like it was missing something. And he was like, well, what is your protagonist's superpower? Like, what are they really good at? Like, what is their passion? And when that clicked, everything else fell into place. But this is something that, Adam, you and I talked about too before, which is people like to see people who are competent. Like, it's okay if you suck at most things, but your character needs at least like one thing, right?
Well,
Like
they don't need it, but it helps, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I think it helps with
yeah,
engagement.
I'm trying to think of one that works where they literally have nothing.
Do you know what
Like
would be a terrible show? Breaking Bad, if Walter White just kind of wasn't very good at making meth.
yeah,
Like
that's
the
true.
same situation. Like it's the joy of the show is watching that talent. It's the wish fulfillment aspect of storytelling, which the power fantasy aspect of storytelling. I don't think every character needs a superpower. They need
Superpower is a very like a very specific word that I think in the case of
what
like
you were
telling an
talking
action
about. Yeah,
adventure thing was like this superpower, but I think it can be
right.
equated to like grand passion or passion or something like that. Giving them something that
A reason
makes
to
them
like somebody worth
special.
watching.
Yeah.
Somebody worth watching, right?
Yeah.
But like coming back to like this idea about grand passion, I don't want people to think like, oh, therefore we have to make all these passionate characters who really love something. No, but it really helps if your character, like if you're following a character who desperately wants something, they like love it. That character is just going to be 99% more interesting than like most other variations of that character. Like apathy does not translate well to drama. It really doesn't. And I think this is kind of a more intense, extra way of stating give your character something to want. And I think the problem with that advice is like, oh, your character should want everything in every scene. Is like, well, they want a glass of water. So they go, to the store, they're thirsty. Yeah. It's not like it's not personal. It's not an access point to help other human beings empathize with that person.
Yeah. So I want to so I guess to recap again, the grand passion that we would identify, and I'm curious in the comments what you all think from our 3 chosen Pixar films. Toy Story is that Woody wants to be the favorite toy. So his passion is being
combination.
Yeah. So his passion is just like being Andy's favorite toy, and that's not in and of itself bad. But his flaw is his toxic relationship to that passion. Like he needs it. He needs to be the absolute favorite, like not just a favorite of Andy. Right. He needs to be the number one. And then in Inside Out, Joy's grand passion is making Riley happy, I would say. Like, is doing good for Riley. But then her toxic relationship to that is believing the only way to do that is to make her happy all the time.
And just to clarify, that works a little bit better than if it was a human being being wanting to make somebody else happy. It's like her job in the world she's in, right? Like it's like literally her name is Joy. She creates joy. Like that's like it mechanizes it a little bit differently than like you can like making somebody else happy isn't usually a good like grand passion or desire. It's not like concrete. It's not like something that makes sense with the average.
Made it tangible by throwing her into her mind and then like putting her on this journey and having her fight with sadness. They made it very, very tangible in a way that is not impossible in a live action film, but like it would make your protagonist feel more inactive if their entire goal was just to make somebody else happy.
From like a point of human beings empathizing with characters on the screen, she loves her job. Right? Like that's what it is, right? Like in terms of like how it plays out in her having dialogue. She loves her job, what she does.
It's true.
Mr. Incredible is the same way, not to jump to another film, but
no, that's true. That's a good one. The Incredibles is a great film.
I never watched the second one. I hear it's good.
It's really good. They do a great job. Yeah. Sure. And then lastly, COCO, his grand passion is music, but his toxic relationship to it is believing this Ernesto. Yep.
And like great. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I thought what they did with Ernesto was great. Like he has to literally see his hero, like that was great.
Fall. Yeah. It's good. And then I wanted to move on to this next point that I know that is also talked about by Michael Arndt. That is interesting to me. It's connected to grand passion. Act 2 is when they are taking the low road. Adam, I know that you might be able to talk a little bit better about this, but basically when you have this grand passion, Like when something goes wrong, you're presented with a high road and a low road, right? And
specifically in the context we're talking about, the one step, just going back a second, is their grand passion is taken away from them.
Mm-hmm.
The grandma breaking the guitar, Woody getting ostracized, Woody being replaced by Buzz, or as the favorite, and in what's the third movie?
Inside Out.
Inside Out. Literally, she's depressed and things aren't working.
Yeah, she's kicked out of the studio, right, or like out of the control room.
It's
taken away. Yeah. She can't do it. Yeah.
So, and then to get it back, to get the grand passion that they lost back, they are presented with the high road and the low road. Woody can accept Buzz as the new favorite toy and just sort of accept the new status quo, and they all can go along, or he can try to get rid of Buzz. You know, like that's, and the character taking the low road is what creates Act 2 and the objective of Act 2. Okay, he took the low road, and now he's ostracized. He has to bring Buzz back, or else he'll lose everything. Marlin has a great Marlin is a great thing. Like in Finding Nemo. Oh my God, I gotta get my son back because I was micromanaging him too much. You know, but like, it's.
Yeah. And then in COCO, it's that, you know, he went after the guitar too hard, and then now he's in the land of the dead and needs to get back before he's dead forever.
That's a great ticking clock, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, they have a nice built-in ticking clock there. Take low road. So that's the other part of the Pixar formula, I would say.
And the thing about take the low road is that it's not arbitrary. It's about the flaw. They give in to the worst of their flaw. It's not just like, oh, I'm selfish, but I have a toxic relationship with my dad separately. Like it's like, it's all the one thing. It's all really focused, and this is kind of where people get accused Pixar of being very simple. And it's there's no other stuff going on in this movie except for the important things.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so it's super high impact. Simple too.
Yeah, I agree. So, and by the way, if anybody has any questions, I will happily pull them on the screen. Do we want to talk about, is the Michael Arndt video about endings specific to Pixar films? Or I know it also applies more broadly.
No, it's not actually. It's not. He just his toy. He has 3 videos you should all watch. We sourced some ideas from that, but not that I agree with everything. Specifically, his belief in a flat arc, I disagree. Just semantics, but his endings videos, his beginning video, and the Toy Story 3 video are really good. But sorry, what were we talking about?
Nothing. I was just asking if that was.
Right. And I Okay, so, but in terms of like bringing it back to like, okay, but I'm coming up with my character and what's important about this, and what's like, how do I make this not stale or formulaic? Because that's where people get in trouble, is that they do shallow stories, basically. Like, they do like, oh, then I'm going to make a movie about pigeons, and he loves pooping more than anything, you know? Like you can, you know, like I'm not saying that's actually kind of funny, but the point is that the grand passion, flaw, inner need triangle needs to reflect what you really care about as a human being, and be something that you put in. Like that's the secret. That's the secret of like not being formulaic, stupid, or shallow, or wasting people's time, is like put yourself and what you really believe into your writing. Like, and this is just one approach, like being like, well, what damage do I have that I can put into my protagonist?
Adam's all about that damage.
I just feel like it's a good word for flaw. Like, it's synonymous with flaw. Like because damage can be healed, right?
Yeah.
And you could say the inner need is the healing for the flaw. Like, I think it's important to constantly look at things from different angles. Like, if you get really obsessed with one word for a thing, without considering like the 8 different words you have for the same thing, sometimes you can get very static in your thinking. So like, it's okay to call flaw something else, that as long as like you have an understanding of like what you're really talking about under the surface, because at the end of the day, I get too academic, but words are descriptive of meaning, right? Like words don't have words have usages, they don't have meanings. And words change because of culture. So at the end of the day, we're trying to describe this thing called story and like the different aspects of that go into telling a story in a screenplay, right? But at the end of the day, you can't get attached to those descriptive terms too much. You can't get, oh, this is the act one break, this has to happen. Yeah, it happens and it's a good tool, it's a good approach, but why is it happening in your movie? Why don't just arbitrarily do that? Like, go to your character and be like, well, okay, I'm at the beginning of act 2 going to act 1. They're going to take the low road because that's what they're supposed to do, and then go after a thing. Well, but ask yourself, is that really a low road that would make people go, oh God, don't do that? Or is that just like something you're just writing on a list being like, oh, that's bad behavior?
True. Yeah, it needs to be, it tends to feel like destructive in the moment. Usually, like it's sort of like, what are you doing? Just like, chill, But also, it doesn't like Pixar films don't like cross lines of making it too terrible.
Oh no, but
yeah.
Woody's looking at the race car and he's going to try and knock Buzz out the window. You're going. I mean, if you're emotionally engaged in the movie, you're going like, oh God, don't do that. You asshole, don't do that. Like that's the what Aristotle calls like the pain and pity, right, of drama, right? Like that feeling of.
In COCO too, it's like he's about to break into the mausoleum or whatever it is, and you're like, dude, that's not a good idea. Like, there's got to be other guitars in this world. Yeah. Like, don't do it, man. And then he does it, and that's what I would say kicks off his low road in a lot of ways. He makes a lot of decisions that end up being headed towards the low road, but that's really what puts him on it.
Right.
And
yeah.
Oh, interesting. Samantha says the first draft of Toy Story was a lot darker.
Yeah, and they were way snarkier and meaner to each other, and it was like very. The difference was, I think Buzz knew he was a toy in early drafts. He was just more of a dick than Woody, and that didn't work as well. The moment they decided to make Buzz like oblivious, it changed the dynamic from like, okay, you just have one asshole. And then this delusional asshole, like he's a different type of person. Like it's not as mean-spirited if you genuinely believe you're a space ranger doing your job. Like it totally changes the dimension of also the character design for worse. I saw the animatic or clips of the animatic from that early version, and they actually filmed dialogue with Tom Hanks but like they were all greenlit with this other version. Yeah.
Oh, I found something that I don't know if it's true or not, but allegedly it is the original treatment for Toy Story.
Yeah, put it up. Let's see it.
I don't know if who knows if it's real, you all. Let's see.
I just want to see what it looks like. We'll find out. This is 1990s, early 90s.
Yep. So this is what I found on a Disney fandom website. Toy Story went through numerous changes before it was released in 95. The story was originally written back as far back as 1991 by John Lasseter, Pete Docter, and Andrew Stanton. And this is about how, the outline itself is featured on a special edition DVD about a wind-up one-man band toy named Tinny. So this is interesting. I'll share this link. But was that going to be our protagonist?
I believe so. Tinny. I hate that.
That's horrible.
No, I could see a movie. I can imagine it, but
yeah, it's not that horrible. It's just not as good as Woody.
No. But that's a really interesting. Yeah, I think this sort of brings up the initial anecdote.
Look at this. This comes back later. Yeah, much later.
That in Toy Story 3.
It says an old beat-up teddy bear tells Tinny to enjoy the son, playing with him as much as he can, as the boy will eventually outgrow him. And then here's the quote. Enjoy it while you got it. Kids grow up and they'll outgrow you. They run off after girls, cars, whatever, and they forget all about their toys. Your best shot is to be handed down. Play your cards right, and when this boy grows up, he'll hand you down to his kids. You're made of tin, so you'll last. Not like some of these plastic things. In a week, they'll all be broken, but you have a chance. Like I said, enjoy it while you got it. It doesn't last forever.
That's a long speech. Jesus.
It is. It is.
Yeah, sorry, Andilla. We had to move it earlier because I've got to go early.
It's all Adam's fault, in case
it's
anyone
my fault.
was wondering.
I fucked up the start time. I gave some good lip earlier on, so sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
But
sad.
Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of like intentionally choosing the right protagonist. This totally, like, they had story problems because they chose the wrong point of view for the movie, and until they really clicked that it was the favorite old Western toy, like literally even like he's a cowboy, an old-fashioned cowboy wind-up toy, and the new space action figure. Like that choice really shows Woody's flaws and insecurities, like who he is and his problems. It's like choice of protagonist is intentionally designed with what the story is trying to do. It's of a piece.
I'll share that article that I was looking at where I think this thing is kind of like summarized a little bit in the Atlantic. But just, I find it really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Also, I would say that like probably not that a lot of Pixar films don't go through many different revisions. You hear about them a lot. Like you hear, I mean, they change a lot over the course of development. But I think that usually, though, they have like a similar Pixar-y vibe all the way through. But in the very beginning of Pixar's time, I mean, Toy Story was the first. So it's going to take a lot of figuring out, like, who are we as storytellers and, like, how do we work and, like, what's our deal? And Creativity Inc. is not the book I thought it was, but I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I thought it was. But it was
more in the business and the history than like creative insight.
It is really, really interesting, and I would recommend checking it out or like listening to it. Story meetings are brutal. Yeah. But
their process with story meetings is why their movies are so good. It's the fact that they push their writers. I don't think it's toxic necessarily. Like I haven't heard anything about that, but like the fact that they go through so many iterations and consider so many talent, like they don't allow idiots into the story room. You know, every person in that room is like a Pixar life person who like really knows their shit. Like they've directed movies in this ecosystem. They're story people. Like they're not just like some Warner executive. You know what I mean? Like they don't let those people into that process. And the process, doing 8 different animatics, each with its own full draft of the screenplay. I think live action films can adopt a similar approach. You know, using a brain trust, doing the pre-cut animatic before you shoot anything. Like I think, what's his name? Wes Anderson actually does something similar, except he doesn't have a story team. But he makes animatics for his movies.
I want to also share this thing that circled around like a long time ago, like I guess like 10 years ago now, where a Pixar storyboard artist, Emma Coates, shared how many things? A list of 22 story lessons that she learned from Pixar. And a lot of them, I'm going to share it on the screen. I'll also share the link. They're really great. So you admire a character more for trying than their successes. You got to keep in mind what's interesting to you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer. And they can be the different, everybody.
That right there, which is let's stop on that.
Yeah.
That right there is what separates a mature like writer who understands story and somebody in film school who's like in love with the sound of their own voice.
Yeah.
We've all done it. Maybe not Alexie, but we've all done it where we've written things that were like meta commentary, interesting ideas that were like more about execution and perception and ironic, presentation, stuff that's not like about human beings connecting with a story emotionally. Like everything that's like cerebral and like disconnected. Like there's so many writers who need to go through that to get to the point of like, but what would an audience react to? Like who are they rooting for? Like who is the eyes of the story? Like those are questions you only ask yourself if you respect your audience. Sorry, continue.
No, for sure. Honestly, I'm like skimming over these and I forgot how good they were because I knew that this existed, but I was going to pull it up for this and they're all great. Trying to
number 4 is one when I've always present as an exercise in our feedback for writing the feature. I always be like, okay, great. You sent me your temp poll. Try this. Once upon a time, there was protagonist. Every day, normal world. One day, inciting incident. Because of that, I do act 1 break obstacle, and then because of that, midpoint. And then I added another because of that, I think. But also this until finally resolution of story. Like, if you can do that with your story, break it down into like 8 sentences, 7 sentences, 8 sentences. Like I know.
Oops.
This sounds egocentric, but I can tell if the story's good or not if you can do that.
Let's see. I'm gonna share this link for.
I'm sorry for calling you out, Andilla. I apologize. I'm calling myself out too. We're all guilty. I think everybody's guilty of.
Yeah. So something else I want to dig into this one a little bit more because I think that there's actually a lot more like. It's so short, but there's a lot of wisdom in this that I'm sure took a lot. And one of the things in particular, Adam just went through and kind of identified the different story elements that these refer to, the different tentpole beats that each of these refer to. But something that I think is easy to overlook and incredibly important is because of that. Exactly. Yeah, it's not one day this happened and then it's because of that. It's alluding to the fact that your story moments are not just things you happen to shove into a row. Yes. It is dominoes. It's all causation. It's all caused.
And do you know what's connecting all of those because that's hidden beneath the surface? What's invisible and what's really making that work is choices. A protagonist makes a choice. A consequence happens. Choice, consequence, choice, consequence. Like that is the invisible part of because you could have, character just mindlessly going through it. But if you go deep with character, if you go deep with their flaw, if you go deep with like what this story's about, they're going to be making choices that define who they are, and they'll be. And if you want those choices to have that clear line of causality.
Yeah, and a lot of this. So that was something that really stood out to me now. That was something that I didn't realize until later, but then it's baked in to the formula. Like I think this formula is a lot smarter than we realize on the surface, and it was already pretty freaking smart. But there's a lot of things here that I feel like I live by, like this, number 11. Putting it on the paper lets you start fixing it. If it stays in your head, a perfect idea, you'll never share it with anyone. So you gotta put it down. And then John lives by this number 10 here. Pull apart the stories you like. That's what Coffee Class is all about. What you like in them is a part of you, and you've got to recognize it before you can use it.
Number 14, I'm vindicated. Look at this. Why must you tell this story? What's the what's the belief burning within you that your story feeds off of? That's the heart of it. So the belief of the protagonist, the false belief versus the truth they must confront, being in the emotional kernel, that's what creates meaning. Like that's when we create heart. And just to answer that question from earlier, how do you create those Pixar moments that make you cry and feel so much of the character? 2 things. 1, you empathize with the characters. You really want them to win. And that's because you've seen them love, and you've seen them go after what they love, right? So you love them, but seeing them learn hard truths about themselves and be forced to change, that's where the meaning and emotion comes from. The like character who has a false belief about themselves, and then they discover the truth about that false belief. That moment is really powerful in stories, and Pixar nails that moment so good. They do it in such a tasteful, powerful way. That's how they do it. And sorry, just the last thing. For to not feel on the nose, it feels on the nose when it's forced. It feels on the nose when it's false. It feels on the nose when they're telling you rather than showing you. And what I mean by that is they're doing something to make a choice. Like when Woody finally, in the end, chooses the friendship with Buzz as his only way to get back to the love of his life, right? And that moment when they're literally piggybacking, going towards the truck, and finally, the rocket on the back, and he lights the thing. He makes a choice to like go the distance with Buzz, and with an intimacy they would have never had in the beginning. He would have never made the choice to have hope and continue with Buzz in the beginning, but he does in the end. Like that, and when they fly and they do the To Infinity and Beyond thing, it's like, oh, this is we're flying. No, it's Falling with Style. They've exchanged each other's lines. That has power because of that false belief is now changed into the truth. It's not like you have to be the only. I have to love. I can be the only one who can love Andy. I'm going to share my love with my best friend. Like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that's good. That's the juice.
For sure. And look, another one of John's favorites. What are the stakes? Got to raise the stakes. There's a lot of just awesome stuff in here. Also, I would connect this to my theory that every writer needs to get therapy. You have to know yourself. I'm going to decide that vindicates me. But I would definitely recommend checking out this list and like going through it slowly after this.
Here's a good one. Give your character opinions.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's really good.
Here we are. Number 13. Yep.
Poison to the audience. That is exactly what likable, passive characters are. Like, oh, this is a nice person. Oh, they're so kind. Yada, yada. It's poison for the story. Mm-hmm. You want dysfunction. You want choices made for bad reasons, especially in Act 1.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that scene with Buzz, that gets me. It's such a good movie, the first one. I know the other ones are good too, but like they aren't the same.
I mean, something about the first one that's just, I mean, it's classic and it was the first, and it's just great. I mean, the other ones are good too. But So yeah, this list, I forgot how good this is, I'm not gonna lie. Here's enough. I like that there's a lot of good advice in here for what to do if you get stuck. There's this one here. If you were your character in this situation, how would you feel? Honesty leads to credibility in unbelievable situations. And then there's some other advice, like just finish it.
Yep.
Do better next time. And then let me see. There was another one I wanted to pull up.
Ooh, number 3.
Here we go.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Number 3. Trying for theme is important. You won't see the story until you're at the end of it. Yeah, you've got to write that first draft out and look at it to see what story you're telling. You might, but but you notice she didn't say, "Oh, theme will come to you after." No, she said, "Trying for theme is important. Go for it, and then see what you have and rewrite it." No,
that's a really good point. That she's not saying. Some people say like, no, don't worry about theme. You'll get the theme on like your second draft or your third draft. It's like, no, you want to try, because like you need, like, everything is going to be of a piece, because we talk a lot about how theme is connected. Theme is not like this thing that just sits over top of it. Theme is connected to your character's flaw and inner need and the beliefs of all of your characters in this story. So it can't be something you don't think about at all. No. But you probably aren't going to get it exactly right until after that first draft, usually. And I think that some of that comes down to the fact that, like, we try to articulate flaws and inner needs as statements of belief. And so it's the lie you tell yourself and the truth that sets you free. And I think that it's pretty common to get a statement that's close, but not quite it in the first draft. And then as you go back through and you start refining it, you're like, you know what, that's not exactly what they believe. And you tweak it just slightly, and it makes a big difference overall.
And guess what that usually means? A very significant rewrite. And do you know what that means? It means you're working. I'm not the biggest Jerry Seinfeld fan in the world, but he had a great nugget that I got from him a few years ago. Not personally, I don't know him, but he was asked, like, well, why was Seinfeld such a big success? Why was it so much funnier than other sitcoms in the 90s? And he basically said, well, basically, we decided that we were going to do the work. 99% of our energy in the show was writing and making it funny. We didn't spend time talking about egos, arguing about things. Like, no, we just did the work. He calls it we shut the door and we worked really fucking hard. And at the end of the day, like, the myth of being like, oh, you're gonna, I just think talent, potential, these are all overrated things. I think they're really important. Like, yeah, talent is important, but like, it's what you do. Do you sit down? Do you shut the door? Do you do the work? Do you do 8 drafts? Do you have the stomach to do it? Like, that's what will get you great. I mean, a second draft is never going to be great unless you've worked your ass off writing those 2 drafts. I know I don't just mean work your ass off producing pages. I mean, like, actually, like, if your second draft is really a 5th draft in terms of how much you thought about it. Like, at the end of the day, I hate bringing up Miyazaki because I'm such a fan boy, but he thinks about his stories and, like, tortures himself looking at drawings, you know? Like, he's thinking about the story on a really deep level. That's why it's good. That's why the Pixar movies are great, because they think about it really deeply. They do the work. I'm done.
So number 8 is something I want to bring up because it's a question that comes up a lot. We frequently get questions from people who are working on scripts, and they're saying, like, I have, like, fallen out of love with this idea, or I have a different idea that I now think is better, and I really want to pursue that one. And while it can be good to have multiple projects at once, and by multiple I mean like 2 that you're kind of going back and forth between when you get stuck. Number 8, finish your story. Let go, even if it's not perfect. In an ideal world, you'd have both, but move on, do better next time. I think that is so important. It's like a lot of times when you've fallen out of love with your story, it's partially due to overthinking the fact that you've been exposed to it so much that it's not fresh to you anymore. The fact that it feels like that you're stressed, you're wondering if it's good or not, and self-doubt. Especially for the first one, you just have to finish it. And it's okay if it's not good. You just have to finish it. And I feel like honestly, that's one of the best, there's a lot of reasons that I enjoyed taking screenwriting classes, but one of them is because you have a deadline and you have to turn in the script then. And if you get to halfway through your writing and you're like, this is trash, I know this is trash. It's like, well, to do in 2 days anyway. So just get it down. I feel like that's one of the most advantageous things about
do a writer's group. If you're the type of person who doesn't mind trying to find good people to do a writer's group, I have a writer's group. We meet infrequently, but in the pandemic, it's great.
We do one in our Discord, the writer's room, and we write together, and we're working on
that one too.
Right now. You forgot about ours. Yeah.
Sorry. That's great too. Guys, use the Discord. It's great. But also Michelle, because of Larry David, 100%. Yeah. I don't think Jerry Seinfeld was very good by himself, as evidenced by the last 2 seasons of Seinfeld, which were trash. Because Larry David left. He left.
So Yeah, I didn't intend for us necessarily to get on that list as much as we did, but
it's got some good stuff. It's good stuff.
It's got some really good stuff, and I feel a little bit validated. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, to circle back to talking about Pixar. Oh, this is good. I got distracted again. Dan Harmon said a cool thing once. If you think you're a bad writer, then prove it. Write a bad script, then write another one. That's a very good point. Yeah. But yeah, to circle back to these Pixar films and to talk about like why they work and things like that. I wanted to talk a little bit about midpoints, which are difficult. Midpoints. Yeah, midpoints. You want to go? You want to talk a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So midpoints, I think, are deeply understood, but flexible enough to be confusing. The midpoints shift the tone in a good way, right? They change the nature of the problem. It's not just more of the same. It's, oh, shit, we're going there now. Mm-hmm. The midpoint of Toy Story 1, I believe, is when they go to Sid's house. They get picked up by Sid, the wrong kid. You know, it's like, okay, we're lost out in the world. We're separated from Andy. Oh, but now we're in the wrong kid's house. And he's next door. So they're closer than ever. They're closer than when they were at the Pizza Planet, but that's a whole new nature of problems. The midpoint of Inception, I always talk about it because I really like it. It's they start the job and then everything goes wrong. So they had all these preconceptions about what they were going to do, what was going to be difficult, and they had a plan. And then immediately the midpoint is they start the job and then everything goes wrong and they have to change the plan on the fly. So a general descriptive element of good midpoints is that it's not a change in objective, it's a change in tactics for the objective. So it's not just like, okay, we're chasing the magic artifact and we needed a boat. Okay, they got the boat. But, you know, it's not that the second half of Act 2 after the midpoint can't be, we need a bigger boat. It's got to be, oh, we have to swim. Mm-hmm. Or something like that. Like it has to be different enough to make the audience shift focus. So, but still be pursuing the same objective. So that was a very technical analysis. I thought that was what you were asking for.
It's a moment that people sometimes call a reversal, where it's a moment where your tactics change and you have to double down towards your objective. Adam, who was it that you were talking about that says that like it's its own inciting incident in a way? Or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's it's a moment of like recommitment a lot of times. It's like a moment when you have to decide, are you really going to do this? Because now it just got a lot harder. Or like where the stakes go up. Basically, it's a change in tactic. Up. That's a good point.
I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm not a big fan of Up. Like, I love the first half of it. But I actually agree that I feel like they lost a little bit of the focus towards the end when they had that other guy and then the poaching thing.
I know, the like air fight. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like
confused. I mean, I think it's a great movie and there was a lot of really good moments. And I also think I'm a little burnt, not gonna lie. I think part of it's that.
He needs a new movie.
He needs a new movie. You need to make him watch I think he's seen Inside Out. The ducks start flying.
Yeah, so you notice we haven't been talking about Up except for now. Because I just don't really like that movie that much.
So what do you all think was the midpoint in Inside Out and COCO? Inside Out has a lot of like reversal moments. Do you think it's when she goes alone? Or what do you think? Yeah, okay. I can't remember. I've seen it, and then I can't remember where did
the ultimate test was Bing Bong's death, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. Okay, and that's what
that for me. That for me was it, because it wasn't just a change in tactics. It was she was changed after that experience.
Mm-hmm. Of the death, right?
Yeah, the death changed her.
Yeah, it was a low. It was a real freaking low. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
The
actually,
theater was crying.
I shed a tear.
Mm-hmm.
The midpoint of COCO.
When he finds his grandfather. Do you mean when he finds out? I can't remember. So typically, something that I do now when I watch any movie at all.
Yeah, it's definitely when he meets Hector. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, is oh yeah, that's a good point.
That's a good point, Michelle. Like,
when he finds out Ernesto is evil. Yeah, it's like it's a big reversal. But something I always do when I'm watching a film is I am constant. It's a John thing I picked up, and I feel like John when I do it, which is nice. But like I pause the movie a lot to see what page number we're on because
I do that all the time. I do that all the time now too. Yeah. But
as
only
you
certain points, like it's like, oh, that's the
like,
act
oh, is
one
this
break,
the midpoint? Right? And then I'll pause it and be like, are we at like 60 minutes, 65 minutes in? And so for those of you who don't know, who aren't familiar with this, in general, about a page of screenplay is equal to a minute of screen time. So scripts tend to be between 90 and 120 pages or 90 minutes and 2 hours. And it generally matches up pretty close. So typically the inciting incident will happen by page 20. And then you'll be into the new world very shortly after that. So that's around where the break is. And the midpoint happens in the middle of Act 2. So it's not
sometimes
the dead.
That means like a little bit.
Yeah.
If Act 1's long, it means it's like a little bit
late.
past.
Yeah, it's the middle of Act 2, not the middle of the movie. So it tends to be a little bit past the actual dead middle of your movie. But typically it happens around page 65, 65. And scripts usually come in under 120 pages. So if you pause it, and if something big happens, a lot of times I'll pause it and I'll say, like, are we at like 65 minutes in? Are we at 60 minutes in? And it almost always is the case.
Brett, I think you're right, actually. I haven't watched COCO. I didn't rewatch COCO for this video. I should have probably. I think that's actually because that moment is a game changer, right? Like, a midpoint should feel like a game changer. Like, oh, I always bring up Star Wars. But the original Star Wars, which you should watch at some point, Alexia, because it's a stupid little movie. But it's like, oh, we had to get to this planet. Oh shit, the planet was blown up, and now we're inside the evil spaceship. Like, it's a game changer. They still have to get the robot to the rebel base, but like the place they thought it was got blown up, and they're trapped.
Yeah.
And it's not at all his lost moment. It's just like a change in objective.
This is a great point, Brett. He also does enter a new world after that moment. And it's right. At the midpoint, not only do the rules change, but we talk in our tentpole document about how there's a new world. So you entered a new world when you broke into Act 2. Your protagonist is out of their element. And then over the first half of Act 2, generally your protagonist is like getting their sea legs, they're figuring this out, they're coming up with a strategy, and going up to the midpoint, it almost seems like they know what they're doing at the times. Like, it seems like, okay, I see how we're going to get there. It's straightforward, it's going to be fine. And then something goes wrong at the midpoint that changes everything. And then now they're in a new world again. The rug has been ripped out from under them, and they need a completely new change of tactics, and it makes everything new. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're transported to a new place, but it means that the rules are changed significantly enough that that they have to approach it as though it were new. They got to learn everything again. So
yeah, I do want to like reiterate though that like this can get, it's kind of, when we get really technical about like timings and like act breaks, and when something goes from being the shift to the new world, from the new world to the new world, it can be confusing. It's just like a technical descriptive understanding of how the energy shifts from the first half of Act 1 to Act 2 to the second half of Act 2. Like, it's not, I don't want people to overthink the term, right? Like, it's still the new world. It's just like the new world, but even worse.
Yeah. Yep. I would say, and I think in COCO, because I was reading the script this week, I decided I would go that approach there. And so I was looking at the page counts and things like that. And I think that I felt like stuff was happening a few pages late, at least in the beginning, in terms of like when the inciting incident happened. But
when did the inciting incident happen?
I think it happened, let's see.
This is the one movie I didn't really rewatch. Because I mean, it came out recently enough. You know, with like Toy Story, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, you got to look at that.
Oh, here we go. So I consider the inciting incident to be her smashing the guitar, because that is what changed everything. And the inciting incident can be something that happens to your protagonist. Did I want to Adam?
Right.
Oh, because I read the script. Oh.
Yeah, and Dilla, also, you know, to assume that this is the moment dominance is established. I don't know. I don't know.
This is what it all comes down to, Adam. Sorry you didn't know. So this is on page 26. So in theory, 26 minutes into the script. And this is where, but keep in mind too that
earlier.
Do you?
Yeah, I think it's I feel like this is the moment where they say like, and that like this is the moment after the inciting incident where they're like, oh, and then like it's unfair. You know, the world beats back and it's unfair.
Maybe. So when Miguel steals the guitar, that's when he crosses into Act 2, because that's when he becomes a ghost. So I know for sure that the break into Act 2 is when he steals the guitar and like enters the world of the dead. That is for sure the break into Act 2. But the inciting incident, there was a lot of like really important moments leading up to that point. And I think you could make an argument for a lot of them. And maybe since the inciting incident is what gives you the objective, it could have been like committing to go to the talent show or something. But
wait,
it's
Michelle,
hard.
This note. Disney tried to trademark Dios de los Muertos. That's incredible. That's horrible. If that's
you can't do that. No.
Oh, God, they're the worst. I mean, they're not the worst, but they're not great. That's so fucked up. Sorry.
How could you possibly? I mean, I guess they tried. What heifers?
Let's get back to before we close it.
Yeah, I wanted to show this though. Even if it is late, like I'm saying, which it is late, this script is also 131 pages, which is long. And it's so this, and I think it's because it's so dialogue heavy, that it actually plays out faster. So in general, if you know there's a lot of dialogue on a page, that tends to move faster than if it's a lot of scene description, because scene description should be description of action, which takes up time, usually.
Wow.
So anyway, what is it?
So just going back, I think, to the whole purpose of this conversation is, okay, there's one aspect of being like, oh, okay, let's understand Pixar stories, you know, for their structure, for the way they organize things, for the way they place characters, whatever. I think that's only as useful at the end of the day as level you can relate information back to your process, right? So like the useful things, I think, really come down to not even any one beat or any one like, so, oh yeah, giving your character grand passion, following these beats, whatever. What's important is just being intentional about your character and really picking the right protagonist, like choosing the right protagonist and thinking deeply about like what the story is. That's the biggest thing I would want people to get out of this. Like I think everything else is kind of like details, technical details.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like there's a lot of character options to choose from in these. I mean, COCO not so much. If you're it has to be the person who goes into the world of the dead, probably to be for that one.
Like,
but in Inside Out and in Toy Story,
it's not just like who it is. It's like who that person is, like their attributes and their damage and their relationships.
For sure. I guess my point is that I see frequently that people will have the protagonist, the true protagonist in their story,
but
not have them be the protagonist. And I could see that happening, especially with Toy Story. If they'd made if someone had written it originally with Buzz as the protagonist, like a new toy comes in, he's in his new world, and then this is happening, and blah blah blah. And is that the story you want to tell? And then Inside Out, I guess they could have done a lot with Inside Out. They could have made it Riley. It just, and I know that they played with a lot of things there, especially like which emotions they'd use. So it's not only like, is it the right character, but then beyond that, like, are they the right person? Like internally, right. Are they the right person for this story?
Are they the right person for the problem of the story? And is it the right problem for that person? Like, it sounds like a catch-22, but like, that's really the important stuff. Like, whether or not they have a grand passion and a flaw that's related to that, that's less important than like going deep with the choices of what the story is in the first place. Like, if you're like, oh, I want to do a stoner comedy set in the 20s on steamboats. Okay, like whatever, that's an idea, that's a setting. But like, who's this about? What's the problem of this story? Like, that's when you actually start having a story and not just like a notion. And when you go for that story, you don't just like pick the low-hanging fruit. You want to pick the really good shit. You want to go deep. And sorry, I'm mixing metaphors. I'm just terrible. But like, my point is to really be intentional about every choice, all the important choices you make, trying to come up with a story and really like make it work and try things. I don't know. I
find it helpful to think about when things are done well, it looks easy. Like it looks really easy, but then sometimes it's helpful to think about how it could have been wrong. And like thinking about COCO, if Miguel didn't care about music, or like thinking about COCO, if he didn't think that this man was his great-great-grandfather, like there could have been another character who went on that journey and happened to get stuck in the land of the dead and like wasn't as passionate about it. Carl's handing me back my glasses.
What if Bing Bong was the protagonist of Inside Out?
Yeah, exactly.
Imaginary.
That would have been nice.
I can actually imagine that movie. The imaginary friend wants to be loved. That's a totally different movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. But here's the thing: the reason why that movie doesn't work is that it disconnects the agency of the little girl in her own life. At the end of the day, joy is really about the girl learning to process the feelings of moving to a new neighborhood. Like, joy is an extension of the girl. All the emotions are extension of her.
Mm-hmm.
And the imaginary friend is a more abstract concept. And it would be like, well, this weird manifestation of her subconscious is taken over.
Yeah.
You know, like that movie would be
sure.
totally different.
Yeah. Oh, wait, Adam.
What? Hello? Alexie, you just froze for me. Am I alone? Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. Did I freeze out or did you freeze out?
I think we both freezed out. Either you or me.
We're both here now. Welcome back, world. Anyway, I think that Adam, you're about...
froze. It was Alexie. Fantastic.
No, it was not.
Before we had this call, Alexie was like, Adam, I can't hear you. It must be your problem. Adam, I can't hear you. And I was like, are you sure? Okay, I checked my audio and I go and I'm like, oh, I'm going to bring my other computer and I go. And then right before I log on with my other computer, she's like, wait, no, it's me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's exactly what happened. I said, ew, Adam, it's your fault.
Immediately.
She said, oh, Adam, and then froze.
That's what happened for me too. That's what happened for me. Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Okay, I got to go, guys, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But hopefully this was interesting.
Yeah, I hope so. And so next week we want to do, I'm excited about it, but I also haven't seen it. So let's see how it goes. Netflix just put it out, the pilot of The Chair with Sandra Oh.
From the creators of Game of Thrones.
Yes, which is
D&D. It'll be very interesting.
Like a comedy in like high academia. So
I mean, she's great, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt.
Amazing. Killing Eve is fantastic. But so that's what we're going to do next week, and we have not seen it, but let's all watch the pilot together and talk about it.
Is it good? What's Michelle's read? Because I want it to be bad too. Like I'm fine either way. I want to watch more things that I think are flawed. Well, Michelle's not going to share with us. All right. Well, there's also a delay, so anyway.
Yeah, it's not Michelle's fault. How dare you?
Fault. I'm so sorry. All right, guys.
I think, yeah. So we'll do that next week, and we will see you then. Thank you, everybody.